Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. First off, a big congratulations to this week's giveaway winner, Darkly Angelic. And I'm gonna keep this giveaway going every single week, so if you're interested and don't know how to enter, stay tuned until later in the video and I'll tell you exactly how to. But let's jump right into our first story of the day by Alexsangthat. Overly strict teacher learns to pick her battles. So I forgot about this story until I read a recent post on here about grade school smart butts and my memory was jarred. This is a story I am not proud of, as I am now a teacher, and if I had a student behave the way my rotten butt did in this story, I'd probably pull my hair out. But it fits the sub, so here we go. In 6th grade, my class got a new science teacher. I will call her Miss Mac. Miss Mac was this young, fresh out of college teacher who probably thought it was a smart idea to rule with an iron fist at first, so she'd earn our respect and obedience. The problem was that she went out of her way to nitpick every single thing we did and enacted much harsher punishments than we deserved, and didn't understand that she would have gotten so much further with us if she'd learned to pick her battles. She'd set ridiculous rules like not letting anyone use the restroom more than 3 times a year during her class, or giving us a Saturday detention if we forgot our homework. Even now, I don't think how she's treated us was fair. But as a moody, obnoxious 12-year-old, I was quite livid and actively tried to think of ways to punish her. I was always an excellent student who got excellent grades. However, a common theme throughout all my parent-teacher meetings was my talkative nature. This often led to many trips to the front office in grade school, so I was pretty familiar with all the admins who adored me. My talkative nature didn't bother them at all. I know it must have been exhausting for my teachers, but Miss Mac took a strong dislike to me immediately because of it. She'd move me every day to sit at the back of the classroom alone if I said a single word to anyone during class, no exceptions, even if it was just to speak about the work. If we had to be in labs that day and work in groups, I'd be forced to work alone. It really sucked. One day, it's 10 minutes into class and somehow I hadn't been moved out of my regular seat yet. I was hopeful for the day. Until the person behind me dropped their pencil. It rolled under my feet, so I picked it up and handed it back. They said thank you, I said you're welcome, and that was it. Before I could even turn back to the front, Miss Mac suddenly screamed, "Darn it, OP, why can't you just control yourself? What is the matter with you? Get to the back and don't you dare say another word for the rest of my class. I mean it." I tried to defend myself, as did the rest of the class, but she refused to hear it. So I moved desks and sat, livid, staring daggers into her. I decided from that moment on, I would follow exactly what she said. I'd never say another word in her class. Not to her, not to my classmates, not to anyone. From the minute I entered her classroom until the minute I left, I was absolutely silent. To be honest, regardless of me ignoring her the few times she directly addressed me, I'm sure she probably enjoyed the first 2 weeks or so of silence. This all came to a head, however, when Miss Mac had one of her monthly administrative reviews, which just so happened to coincide with my class that day. At some point during the class, Miss Mac was showing off for the admin at the back of the classroom and randomly calling on students for a review game. She must have been in her groove or something because she clearly forgot about the ongoing situation between us, and she calls on me to answer one of her questions. I just sat there, complete silence, staring directly into her eyes. She asked again, and I know it took everything in her to not lose it on me when I just smirked. She definitely couldn't lose her cool in front of the admin, so I knew she wasn't gonna yell at me like before, so I was really enjoying the moment. Watching the gears turn behind her eyes, knowing she could either keep trying to challenge me and make herself look bad, or she could ignore my disobedience and make herself look bad, she chose the latter. The admin was not as willing to ignore my blatant insubordination, and she personally knew me to be quite talkative, outgoing, and respectful to all adults. So she walked up behind me and leaned over and asked in a whisper if everything was okay. I turned to look at her and I just nodded. She whispered, "Then why aren't you answering Miss Mack?" I turned back to my teacher and looked her right in the eyes as I said at full volume, "Miss Mack told me last month that I was never allowed to speak another word in her class again." I wish I could have gotten her face on camera. Hers and the admin's, if I'm being honest. They both were such a lovely mix of shock and distaste. Unfortunately, I didn't get to hear the things that were said when the admin pulled Miss Mack into the hallway, but the contortion of her bead red face upon her return to class was enough to fuel my imagination for years. The admin took it upon herself to check up on me once a week for the rest of the year. She'd stop by during that class, pop her head in and just look at me expectantly, waiting for me to nod that I was okay. Miss Mack studiously ignored these interactions, but I know they ate away at her. And never once did she say another word to me about my talking. Do you think just a stern talking to from the admin was enough for this teacher, or do you think that there should have been maybe something a little even more severe done? Let me know yes or no in the comments down below. Our next story is by FoolishStone. Do you really want the grade you deserve? Around 1990, I taught a computer course for a few semesters at our local university for evening master degree students. One assignment consisted of a number of short answer questions, plus a short program in Pascal. Get in on that trend early, kids, it's gonna be big. I had a grader at the time, doctoral student who made extra money grading assignments, who had taken on too many classes, and so was not paying very close attention to some of the answers on the papers he was grading. I handed back this particular assignment, and 2 or 3 students came up complaining about their grade on a specific question, which was worth a fair number of points. I promised to take their papers home and look them over. Next class, I handed back the papers to the students and said that I agreed that the grader had misunderstood the sense of their answers and incorrectly marked them down. They went back to their seats, happy that the grades on their papers had improved from low B's to low A's. One of the other students, let's call him Mordecai, watched this interaction and decided he would like to improve his grade too. So he fished out his assignment from the previous week and brought it up to my desk for regrading. I asked him which question in particular did he think he deserved a second look. He said he just generally thought he deserved a better grade. I promised to look at it over the break, then started class. Since these classes were designed for busy professionals trying to get a degree at night, they met once a week, but for nearly 3 hours. So we took a break 90 minutes in. Break time comes, the students go to the hall to use the loo, get coffee or soda, whatever can keep them awake from 7 to 10 on a Monday night. Some of the students are milling around and talking. I pull out Mordecai's paper and start looking it over. 3 minutes later, I look up. There's Mordecai, and behind him is a queue of half a dozen students holding their papers from the previous week. Apparently, word had gotten out that I was doing wholesale regrading of everyone's assignment and points were to be had. Now, the whole point of having a grader, and what he got paid to do, was to relieve me of needing to grade 30 papers myself. I always did 3 or 4 so the grader knew what I was looking for, but I already spent 10 hours a week preparing lectures, assignments and tests, doing administrative work, plus 3 hours standing in front of the class. And this was just a sideline. My day job was very demanding. So I looked at Mordecai and said, "I've glanced over the test and looked at the item the other students felt was not graded right. Your answer was correct though, so you got full points on that question. But I was looking through the program you wrote, and I think the grader was too easy on you. For one thing, you did not observe the coding standards I passed out in the first class. There are practically no comments, so it's very hard to follow. And you pack everything into one big routine rather than using functions. So you got a B on the paper. You can accept that, or if you insist you have a legitimate complaint, I'll take this home and give it my full attention and hand it back to you next week with the grade it deserves. What would you like to do?" Mordecai took back his paper, looked at it uncertainly, then wandered back to his desk. I looked up at the line of students behind him. They slowly followed suit. I mean, I think that's fair. If you're going to try and game the system and ask for a full review, in hopes that some of the ones you got marked wrong would actually be marked right? I would say don't be surprised that some of the ones that got marked right were actually wrong and would also get corrected. It's just kind of the gamble you take asking for a review of your work. The next story is by pepsigloryhole, A Marker to the Face. As a bit of backstory, this happened in my 8th year in a science classroom. There was a full class, but the only really important people are me, my friend Mark, and my teacher, Mr. C. So it was a typical Friday. Towards the end of the day, the class was chatty and Mr. C was going through the agenda and introduction. I, a few friends, and Mark were all ignoring him and just talking about games we play and what had happened in band class earlier. My teacher, Mr. C, had told us to shush, and we did for a moment, then immediately started talking again because we were angsty preteens who wanted to go home for the day. This had gotten Mr. C's attention for what seemed to be the last time because he, in a very annoyed tone, asked us to be quiet once again. Now, for a bit more background knowledge. Whenever someone wouldn't be paying attention in his class, he would be silent and start winding up to throw an expo marker, and then if that didn't get your attention, would toss it at you. Obviously not to hurt anyone, and very softly to just get your attention. Also, this is unrelated to the story, but he'd slam a textbook on your desk if you were asleep. So we hadn't listened to his final plea, and then he began to wind up a marker. Mark had noticed and, being the leader of our friend group, asked why Mr. C has such an issue with us talking towards the end of the day. Then this happened. Mr. C says, "So if it's not such a big deal, why don't you teach the class while I talk with OP?" This was very condescendingly said. Me whispering, "Do it," because we got to waste class time for everyone. Mark says, "Absolutely, sir. I will be the best science teacher ever." That with a salute, and then he stomped up to the whiteboard and began reading aloud the notes on the agenda and the beginning of the lesson. Mr. C says to me, "So while I was studying abroad the wildlife in a rainforest, did you know I found 67 bird species?" He was whatever a bird scientist is called before becoming a teacher. I say, "Okay, but was there a toucan?" Then, seeing us talking, Mark gets a brilliant idea. He goes silent and begins winding up a marker towards Mr. C. The class had stifled their laughter, and I was also holding back a chuckle. This, of course, didn't have Mr. C's attention, and he kept rambling about birds in Africa. Then what no one, not even me, expected, Mark tossed the marker at Mr. C and hit him right in the face. The class erupted into laughter. Mr. C began laughing too. He got up and told Mark to go sit back down. Mr. C was a very lighthearted person and saw the humor in the situation. And instead of doing science for the rest of the class, he had to explain the point in being respectful to your teacher and listening to the lessons instead of having sidebar conversations. Overall, it was a really nice class and there were no hard feelings, but for the rest of the year, Mr. C never asked anyone to teach class again. Hey, there's no talking in class. And you know the drill, the expo marker goes up, it's gonna get wound up. You keep talking and you don't pay attention. Mr. C, you better watch out, you got a target on your face apparently. Our next story is by rjohn09, Smoke Break. For my first office job, I worked in a department of 15 to 20 people with a boss who was very chill and really only cared that the work got done. His assistant, however, was a real stickler for all the rules. The divergent attitude split the staff a bit and the office was a bit cliquish. Because the boss didn't care much, 1 hour lunch breaks pretty routinely became an hour and 10 or an hour and 15 minutes. That all changed when he left the department and his assistant took over. One of her first moves was to crack down on the late lunches. Not her clique. However, her clique included a lot of smokers who always took their 2 15-minute breaks daily, once before lunch and once in the late afternoon. The other clique, including me, did not smoke, so we never used that time for anything but work. Once the crackdown memo on the lunches went out, we hatched our petty revenge plan for the next day. 10:30 in the morning, the late lunch clique all stood up from our desks and walked outside to the picnic table smoking area. Naturally, the new boss was hot under the collar, but there's nothing that she could do about our now 2 break and 30-minute per day breaks mandated by law. Congratulations, new boss. You saved the company 10 minutes from my late lunch, but ultimately costed 20 for my smoke breaks. This is going to end up being that situation where, instead of addressing the situation the way you should, this boss assistant person is going to go straight to the top and try and cancel these smoke break things because, smoking's bad and all that stuff. Which, is true, smoking is bad, but they wouldn't do the reasonable thing and try and work the situation out properly. The next story is by Qin-Yuhan. 1 page of notes, whatever you want. This happened a few weeks back. I had my mid-year exams for literature and had to write an essay on Julius Caesar, which my class was tasked to read. My teacher stated that we were only allowed to bring a one-sided piece of handwritten notes as references. She also warned us that anyone that did not meet the criteria would automatically have their reference sheet confiscated and had to write the essay without anything from the book, basically making it impossible to pass. Thing is, she only told us the references had to be handwritten a day before the exam, which meant my notes had to be completely rewritten. I wasn't too happy with this as I didn't feel like taking 2 hours transferring everything I've written. Then I realized there was a huge loophole. She specified the notes had to be one-sided and handwritten, but did not specify the size of paper. I ended up getting an A2 sized piece of poster board and basically copied the entire book over, plus analysis for every single scene. Took me a whole 3 hours, but it was worth it. The next day I went to class holding the poster board and sat down for the test. My teacher lost her stuff. Basically tried to issue me a conduct slip on the spot and give me a 0. Unfortunately for her, she set the requirements herself and so technically I wasn't cheating. Somehow, I was the only person in class who thought of this and I basically got a free A on my report since I essentially had my entire essay already written. My teacher couldn't fail me and had to give me an A. Got a bunch of laughs from my classmates as well because the poster board was so big they could easily copy off of it from behind without getting in trouble. Now that is a creative solution to a beautifully wide open loophole. So quickly now, I just want to give you info on the giveaway. So if you want to be in with a chance to win $30 in Amazon gift cards, all you have to do is leave a comment pertaining to something you saw in the video on any video we upload this week, and I will pick a winner from a random video on Sunday night after the last video has gone out and announce it on next Monday's video. So feel free to comment on every video from the week to better your chances of winning. Again, I do want to stress that the comment has to be related to the video so you can't just leave a random comment and expect to win. And whilst you're at it, why not like the video because it helps more than you know. And our final story of the day is by Fiennes. Want me to write a short perspective of world religions from the perspective of an alien race? Sure. I am not sure that this post qualifies as it didn't end well for me. Back when I was in high school, I used to go to a Roman Catholic school here in the UK. We had a rather irate RE teacher, religious education. One Friday, we were set homework to write 2 to 3 pages describing world religions as if we had just discovered the planet as an alien. I set to work and wrote it out on the Friday evening. Then had a thought. If I were writing this from the perspective of aliens, then it wouldn't be in English. Foolish me. I came up with a symbol for each letter of the alphabet and rewrote the entire thing with these symbols. Monday morning rolls around and I handed it in, with a decoder of course. I ended up in detention for 2 days. I also understand I probably wasted that teacher's time when they just wanted to read and grade, but part of me wanted to get some kind of credit for the extra work. Oh well, sometimes compliance isn't all roses. If I was that teacher, I would both love and hate the heck out of that piece of paper because that's beautiful creativity. And as a teacher, I would want to foster that creativity, but also I don't want to decode that thing. You should have went double side and wrote English on one side, and then maybe it would have been worth extra credit if you had an English and alien scripture side. Now that would be pretty cool. But who wants to do all that writing? But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which one and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe if you haven't. And make sure to click the bell to turn notifications on too so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you did, whether it was liking, commenting, subscribing, thank you for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. It all helps the channel grow immensely, so thank you so very much for supporting me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and until next time, I'll be reading even more stories to share with you guys right here on the Storytime channel.